Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. And do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda as it reads.
Seconded.
All right, and all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? That passes. Okay, and I think next we're going to have a council update from Council Member Jim Smith.
Do we want to?
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Jim Smith, East Bethel City Council. Last night's meeting, we had an off-sale liquor license application for Harry's LLC. It's a new liquor. I think it was in Go For It Gas. It's a new owner. So we approved that after a public hearing. We also had a septic tank variance on 138 Laurel Road. And I went over there, and them lots are so small over there on Coon Lake Beach. And the only septic that he can put in there is a holding tank. So we approved that as well. The two lots are kind of different there, but that's the only way he can do it.
Approve the holding tank or approve?
Yeah, approve the holding tank. And then last we'd like to invite all you guys to the East Bethel Fire Department open house. That's October 7th from 5 to 7:30. They'll have all the trucks. They're going to try to have a helicopter if they can. It's really cool to go to. I mean, especially for kids. They really got their eyes open like when they see all the stuff that fire department has. So if you can do that, that'd be great.
Perfect.
But other than that, that's all I got.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next thing is approval of minutes. Does anybody have any corrections or comments?
Not in attendance, I will abstain.
Nothing? Okay, well, I do have one thing. On line 229, it said Johnson shared her thoughts on how no one will likely build anything on the in property. It would have been build a residential property on Hunter's Inn property. Or residential host. I didn't review the comments, but I do remember talking about it, that I didn't think anyone would build a house there. That was the only correction I had.
Motion to approve the amended minutes?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 And opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved with the correction. And the next thing is a public hearing on a conditional use permit. And
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. This is a little bit complex of an item, so I'm going to try and walk everyone through as much of the detail as we can. There will probably be some questions I'll do my best to answer. The applicant is here. I see we do have a neighbor here as well, so there will be at least a couple of public comment participants. So without further ado, on September 9th, 2024, the city received an application from Carl Verkus, owner of North Country Concrete Incorporated, for a conditional use permit for exterior storage on a vacant parcel across Ulysses Street Northeast to the west of the existing North Country Concrete Incorporated location. The vacant parcel is 3 acres in size and is located in the northwest corner of 230th Lane Northeast and Ulysses Street Northeast in a light industrial zoning district. It borders a 17.5-acre single-family residential R1 parcel on the west and 3 single-family residential R1 parcels in the Cooper Lake Estates subdivision to the north. Verkus is proposing exterior storage of equipment, trucks, trailers, and for the associated business across the street at 23035 Ulysses Street Northeast. He is proposing the construction of a 6-foot privacy fence with an entrance gate on Ulysses Street Northeast and one in the cul-de-sac on 230th Lane Northeast, with landscape boulevard areas with evergreen trees and bushes to match the existing facade of the North Country Concrete location across the street. Additionally, the proposal includes stripping and removing of topsoil and replacing it with crushed asphalt millings to provide positive drainage to the roads for watershed, as well as installing drive-over curbs and concrete approach aprons at each gate location. There is not a building included in this proposal. However, Verkus indicated that he would be constructing a building on the parcel someday. So the first item is to determine the zoning code for that parcel, which is section 48 light industrial. So light industrial district permits exterior storage as regulated under section 24 as a conditional use, or with a conditional use permit. That entire section is attached in your packet, attachment number 4. And you can see on page 17 that exterior storage as regulated by section 24 is allowed as a conditional use. However, I also identifies other similar uses to those permitted in this section as determined by the Planning Commission and approved by the City Council, also as a conditional use. Moving on to exterior storage as cited in the zoning code. And exterior storage section 24.4 in the industrial district states that construction yards are exempt from exterior storage requirements as outlined in section 24.4A, provided they are located in a rear yard behind a principal building and cannot exceed the square footage of the principal building and shall not be allowed within the required setbacks, public right-of-way, private access easement, or within a required parking area. So attachment 5 is section 24 of the code with exterior storage. And on page 20, subsection 4 is the section on construction yards and their exemption, but it also outlines that those other factors behind a building not to exceed the floor, the square footage of the floor print, and all of those items. Under the current proposal, exterior storage on a separate parcel without a principal building would not meet the conditions of city ordinance. So then I processed through on, could this be an off-street parking? Could this be considered a parking lot? So I looked into section 22 off-street parking and loading requirements, which is attachment 6 in your packet, page 23, which states that the purpose of this section is to establish off-street parking standards to allow for orderly and adequate parking of vehicles on property to alleviate and prevent congestion on a public right-of-way and to control the appearance and maintenance of parking areas and surfaces. Number 2 is the regulations and requirements set forth in this chapter shall apply to all off-street parking facilities in all zoning districts. In subsection 3, the general provisions prohibited uses in parking areas. Required off-street parking areas in all zoning districts shall not be used for open storage of goods, recreational vehicles and equipment, commercial vehicles and equipment, unlicensed or inoperable vehicles, or vehicles available for display or sale. And section 4 requires design, construction, and maintenance that all parking facilities and streets are subject to the City East Bethel engineering standards. So those are highlighted, like I said, on page 23. In addition to page 23, on page 31, subsection 13 provides for parking provisions specifically in the light industrial district, which talks about the location of parking spaces, how far they have to be from the right-of-way, from side yard to rear yards, that screening is required based on section 23, which are the screening regulations, and that parking areas abutting residential districts shall be screened from adjacent properties. Types of screening materials shall consist of berm, fence, wall, and landscaping. Plans for screening shall be submitted and approved in a site plan review process. So since that is a potential, I looked at what the screening regulations are. Section 23, screening regulations, sub B, any business, industrial, or non-residential, or residential dwelling other than a detached single family adjacent to any residential district shall provide screening along the boundary of residential properties. Section 23, which oddly enough is labeled page 1 in your packet, I don't know why, has all of the screening regulations for a parking lot to include, except as provided under Appendix A, Section 24, All storage of materials and equipment related to, located on, or used by any business, light industrial or non-residential, shall be stored inside a building. Exterior storage in business districts that is allowed by other provisions of this ordinance shall be screened from the public right-of-way and adjacent properties. Moving on to the actual construction, grading, filling, and excavation. Page 34 in your packet is section 35, which talks about the grading of the land to generate or create a development, a parking lot, streets, roads, homes. And part of it is, of that grading, filling, and excavation is stormwater management, which subsection 7 says that no land shall be developed and or no use shall be allowed that results in water runoff causing flooding, erosion, or increasing runoff onto adjacent properties. Such runoff shall be properly channeled into a watercourse, ditch, storm pond, or appropriate facility, subject to review and approval by the city engineer. Those are located on section 35, page 37 for your review. The Planning Commission should review the information, hold a public hearing, and make a recommendation to the City Council of either approval with conditions, or a denial of a conditional use permit for exterior storage on a vacant parcel. And I'm not going to read off the parcel ID number.
Thank you. That was a lot of work on your part. Wow. Aaron, I don't have the sheet for the people that were signing in.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to open the public hearing right now, and what I'd like to do is ask anyone who's not the owner, come up first in case you have any concerns or comments, positive or negative. Okay? And please come up to the podium and state your name and address, please.
My name is Jane Weinhold, 1015 229th Avenue Northeast. On my property is the 17.5 acres that they were talking about. So I have a couple questions that the owners actually did kind of answer a few as far as noise, running trucks for long periods of time. They stated that there would not be long periods of time for that, but is there going to be a surveyor when they do the property line for the fence and the berms? Is that marked already? That would be one of my questions. And talking about the watershed, what side is this water drainage going to be on? So I guess stating there's always already going to be a fence that was in with, if it gets approved, that's already in place, the fence and the berm?
Potential.
Potential, okay. When is that going to be voted on? When will I find out if
So this is going to go to City Council. Do you know the date?
2 weeks from last night, so October 14th.
Maybe to help you clarify, we're an advisory committee
Right,
that oversees the public hearing comments. Will make a recommendation, and ultimately becomes the city council who votes on it, whether we agree, deny, or agree with conditions, etc. It's somewhat of a formality, but it is going through, kind of trying to do the heavy work to be able to give a recommendation, and then they can review it themselves, go through some similar process, and again, make up their own decision. We're just an advisory committee from that level.
Right, so, so what happens is we'll give a recommendation, and then the City Council will just take a look at it, and then they'll make the final decision.
So I can add and help answer your questions. If the recommendation to approve this, and the City Council does support the recommendation and passes it, the site would then need to go through what's probably a site plan review process, which is going to require a plan. It's going to need to be surveyed. All of that will get triggered after we determine if what's not allowed by ordinance is allowed or recommended by conditional use at this point. Our stormwater management ordinance doesn't allow for a parcel of property to shed water onto adjacent properties. It has to be contained within the parcel itself and then drain off through the ground into the stormwater system. That is all gonna be part of the site plan review and the engineering approval grading process. So don't wanna put the cart too far ahead of the horse. If the commission doesn't recommend approval and the council agrees, then I don't want to have the applicant have spent money on something that is all for naught, so.
And depending on how it's agreed, under what conditions may determine different things. So it's hard to just give a blank answer
Okay,
to it, but those things would definitely be considered if
Okay.
something was to move forward.
all right, thank you.
Okay, Jean, you're done?
Yeah.
Thank you for coming up. Okay. Either Aaron or Carl Burkus, if you'd like to come up, or you could both come up to the podium together if you'd like. And please state your names and your address.
I'm Carl Verkus, 23035 Ulysses Street. To answer your question, the corner, you can probably kind of see in this corner here, some lines there. There's a CP already in place there for draining that property. So I could see most of that water all going kind of where that area is right there. It's already going under the street and then over to the drainage pond across on the other side of my property. So there's already drainage there. Is it enough? We'd have to have it engineered, I'm sure. Make sure it's enough to drain that property, but it's pretty sandy soil over there too, so I think that would probably wouldn't be a problem. There's enough material there. If she wanted to build a berm, for now, we don't need the whole huge area for storage. We could probably build a berm if that was a concern in the future. Other than that, yeah, we're just, we grew out of our parking lot, but not our building yet, so we're hoping to be able to get some of our paving equipment and some of the trucks, our support trucks and stuff we don't use every day over there, and maybe put up even a, what do you want to call it? Like they do in a lumber yard, keep things out of the sun and stuff, maybe along that property too, at some point, and then maybe in the future build a building over there. So. But at this point, we really don't need another building.
Carl, have you had a chance to talk with Jane about the woman who was up here?
Yeah, I
Okay.
spoke with her just a little bit ago.
Okay, sounds good.
Better here.
Okay, so you know each other now?
Yeah,
Okay,
kind of explained it.
great.
Yep, Aaron Verkus, 23035 Ulysses Street Northeast. And going back to Jane also, we did talk to some surveyors at EVS, Landform, E.G. Rude, Chris Toth over there said he knows you pretty well. So we'd go through the process, we'd probably have to no matter what, to get the SWIP, the erosion control plan, basically topography, have them survey all of the lot lines out, figure out exactly how much material would have to come off, and then kind of go from there as well.
Okay. Do any of the council members have any questions before we close the public hearing?
I have one.
Go ahead.
How long have you been located in the spot you're at right now? How long has your business been running?
10 years now. Yeah, 10,
10
11
or 11
years.
years?
I don't remember, but pretty close.
Okay.
11 years, so. Like I say, we kind of grew in the last, I think we're double the size we were 10 years ago. So we got 150 some vehicles and curb machines and bobcats and just a lot of stuff that when everybody comes in right now, that's with our crews out. When everybody comes in, that fills up pretty quick. You got 13 crews that come in with all the equipment and support, you know, vehicles and all that stuff.
So no public parking, it's all gonna be your equipment?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, I mean, all of our employees now for the office are out in the parking lot, so, or parking back, so.
So during the winter, when all the vehicles and trailers come in, this turns into basically permanent storage during winter. And we only have this rest of our yard, about a third of it for all of our other rebar and everything else that we use. So it gets pretty tight in there. And if we want to,
And snow removal gets
Yeah.
difficult, trying to get snow pushed around or moved around, so that gets to be a big deal.
So you're gonna use it like a loading, transfer,
Yeah, correct, yeah.
so it's just adding on because your business has grown and now you need more space to be able to effectively do what you need to do.
And we love the spot there, it's gonna be right off the highway, it's been awesome, so.
be more efficient to have that property, to move everything over. And if we do hopefully grow even more, we'll have that option. Otherwise, we just kind of lease something.
Thanks.
else before we close? Anyone else like to come up? If not, we're gonna close the public hearing. Thank you for coming up. And discussion?
Before you go any farther, I know I included in the packet some pictures of the existing screening boulevard areas and stuff from the current location. This is the proposed lot on the corner. Just another view from the street. It'd be the one on the left. The fencing on the right is the existing fencing, which is part of the proposal to match that fencing, I believe, with the landscaping and evergreens that you see. Something similar to that is what was included in the proposal during application time. So I did draw 2 resolutions. The first resolution approving the conditional use permit has a lengthy list of conditions that come out of screening requirements that is in the code. Obviously, the denial is a denial because it's not allowed by code, but
Approve as read or deny as
yes.
read.
So again, as I stated, my recommendation would be that you approve with alternative conditions, or deny. So.
All right, any comments?
I guess I'll start. I honestly understand their predicament, and I'm not against it. I live pretty close to the property. I think they're pretty good neighbors. I think their site's always clean, neat, mowed. I think they do a great job. There are some conditions I'd want to see. I would ask them to leave as many of the trees as they could on the neighbor side to the north. Maybe even if you had to move the fence in onto your side a little bit. I think the neighbors on the north would appreciate that. I think that I definitely would want to see a survey. I'd want to see the fence matching the fence you have. And then I definitely would want to see not just a 4-foot apron, but maybe 20 feet minimum at each entrance so they don't track debris onto the road.
There's a picture that if you can pull it up again on that packet, where it kind of shows, you can actually see it on the aerial as well.
On that one?
Yeah.
Yep, yeah,
Try and match
excellent,
that same
yep.
size.
And that's just one of the things I would like to see. And then,
Little easier for semis going in and out.
and then lastly, I don't really would want to see water runoff into the catch basin and go across the road. I'd rather see you build a small pond, you know, and have the engineering and, you know, and design. Would probably recommend that anyway. Because that way we're not adding to the storm system, right? Most of the stuff would be, I mean, we do that with our roads, like in my neighborhood, you know, we collect it, we send it to a pond, it doesn't go to the lake, it doesn't add to the storm system. So those are my things, but if they met all that, I understand. I mean, I know it's not technically attached because of the road, but it's a touching properties as far as I'm concerned. I mean, they own, you know, I mean, it's divided. There's a lot of properties in this state that a road goes through the property. And so, to me, they'd be like they would be expanding their property. And obviously, if they're careful of the neighbors to the north and to the west, I think it would be a good project for them. That's a lot, I guess.
Any, Brian, do you have something that you want to say? No?
No, it looks like they said when they were speaking that they're growing business, and they're wanting to add some more room for the equipment as it accumulates. They spoke with the neighbors. They seem to be mindful of, you know, where they're going to be putting their foot down, right up next to those residential lots. And you know, we have ordinances in place to make sure that that's not going to be disruptive. So I see no reason to deny, and I think that we should recommend the city council that they can go ahead and move forward with this.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any negative comments or concerns?
I'll be the broken record.
That's good.
And again, and my sentiments follow Corey's as well. Again, I see the need. They've been a good commercial business in the city. Sounds like they've been a great neighbor. Sounds like they're willing to do what it takes. I think they can probably find a company to pour a nice apron, no matter what the distance is, at a reasonable cost, I'm sure. Sorry, that's satire. Outside of that, again, I say the broken record part because, I have to always caution, and this isn't subject to you guys at all. Again, I'd love to give everybody what everybody wants, but it doesn't always work. I caution precedents. That's always going to be the biggest issue here, and when we are looking at it, and even though it can make sense, if there was something to be approved, and I'm not saying I know a path to it, have to be careful on how we word it, what it's subject to, because again, if it's approved, that can make or break the next one that comes up front. Again, I know we just had one fairly recently that the council did approve that we had sent over. However, that was a touching property, and there was some other discussion and some other elements that fall into it. So I'm not saying that I'm not against this. I'm just, again, I caution precedents, how far we keep pushing, and if it's one, now we have two. When does it become four? Who else needs something? And then, you know what I mean? It just keeps going from there. So please keep that in mind when we're looking at these things. Again, I want to be all for it. If I can find a path, I'm not saying I know one yet, but again, I'll always caution. Careful with precedents of what we allow and don't based on what our code reads.
So with conditional use permits, precedent, I think, is not as important. You kind of look at each one individually, don't you? As an IUP, I think.
Variances are supposed to be judged that way. I think interim use permits are sort of those short-term exploratory things that maybe aren't allowed by code, but we're going to give it a couple years of a chance to see if maybe it can then change the code. Conditional uses are permanent. They stay with the land. And so hypothetically, North Country Concrete leaves town. Someone buys this, they can start storage on that lot. There are very limited limitations because once a conditional use permit is issued, it sticks with the land.
Exactly. Yeah, I fully understand, what happens with, when, if they were to leave the property, that would go with the property. So that's something we need to kind of consider in all of this.
Correct.
But I do think that the conditional use permits, we do kind of look at them individually, that if one is granted, then it doesn't mean that we necessarily need to grant another one.
No, and you can look at everything case by case by case, but I think getting to Commissioner Belfany's point, at some point, why have an ordinance manual? If you're just going to continue to approve things that aren't allowed by ordinance by just offering conditional use permits, maybe you just change the entire ordinance manual then to start allowing everything. X, Y, and Z.
Right.
I mean, I wasn't part of writing this ordinance manual. I don't know why they got to where they got to with a lot of these things, but what's being proposed and what comes across my desk, I'm just pointing out the facts that this is what our ordinance says. Doesn't mean that this is a bad use of this property, right? But our ordinance just doesn't allow it.
Yep.
Right.
So that's what leads to the conditional use portion, because there's that catch-all statement in all of the zoning code that says, or other uses approved by, recommended by you guys and allowed by the council.
Right.
So that's kind of a catch-all for situations maybe similar to this.
Yeah, and this one in particular is unique. I mean, you were looking at all of these different
yeah, I was trying to make it work so that we didn't have to come to this point.
But to paint a random scenario that could happen, let's back up to 2007. We approved this as it sits like this under conditional use. It's a separate parcel ID, if I'm correct. So, and 2008 hits, we're in a recession, times are tough, business slows down, shrinks, hey, we've got this property, we can sell it. Oh, look, here's a used car dealer lot that wants to just put vehicles. here's a recycling center that can now do this legally, and they sell it, there's nothing that's gonna stop us outside of something further in the code from allowing someone else. So I'm not saying that that's them and that's their scenario, I just have to caution
Sure.
when we do this, because we've had a lot of these lately, or a lot of items similar to, and again, I want to try to make everything work for everybody as well, but we do still have to be cognizant of how we go about it and what it does for the next, and the next, and the next.
Sure, I think we do, and we're taking that into consideration, and I think this year we actually probably recommended denial a lot on things too, so we really are taking that into consideration.
What if what if the owner agrees to terminate the permit upon a sale
I don't know.
as one of the conditions?
Our attorney in the last conversation with the previous exterior storage was very clear that conditional use permits don't expire even if the landowner
Even if there's a
changes,
condition of
leaves,
that.
whatever, it sticks with the property. So similarly to the one we had before, if that property were to sell and a new owner wants to come in, we did add a condition that it could be boat or marine only. So they're not gonna be able to come in and just start storing random things. A new owner could store boats or marine products based on that condition.
So conditions follow with a sale. So if you have a condition on a use
Correct.
permit, that cannot be changed.
Correct.
Or so
gonna be
if you
my
put a
question.
condition that said something like a concrete equipment is stored there or not, would that not be acceptable? Is that too
I mean,
specific?
I assume
think?
it would be.
Is it
It's
silly?
just gonna prompt someone to come in and want to amend a conditional use permit in 10 years when it sells. Like, I don't know if we're creating future work for ourselves or
Mhm.
by making things that way or not. But to answer your question, our attorney was very specific that it does not terminate.
Does an excuse me, does an interim use permit expire with the sale?
So you can add conditions to an interim use permit that on sale or change of ownership, then the interim use permit would expire. However, this exterior storage is not defined as an interim use in the zoning code. It's defined as conditional use. So changing the code would be necessary in order to make that happen.
I'm curious why, I mean, why it would not be acceptable, I mean, other than it's not in the language of the code, but an interim use permit seems like it would create more flexibility on the part of the city than a conditional use permit. So why would that not be permitted?
It's just not defined in the code as a interim use. That first page, page 16 of the packet. Interim uses in the light industrial zoning district are subsection 5. Temporary seasonal sales as permitted by section 10, or other uses permitted in this section as determined by the planning commission and the city council. But exterior storage is identified in E of sub 4 as a conditional use. What they're proposing is exterior storage.
And then there's limitations too, said exterior storage further within the code.
Glenn, did you have anything else?
Yes, I'm wondering, is the cul-de-sac on Ulysses on the going north, is there any likelihood or intention of expanding that farther north?
That's a good question.
That'd be up to
Yes.
the property owner.
The answer is yes.
Because the other solution I saw would be if it weren't to have the city cede that to the property owner and then have it terminate before that, and so that would be continuous property from their existing.
So cities don't regularly pay for property from property owners, put in utilities, and then vacate them and give them back to landowners that taxpayer dollars were used to buy.
Yeah.
That's kind of counterproductive to the process.
Well,
The future extension does run by here, connects with 231st and lands right here.
Yeah, and by seed, I probably should have said sell, but still, if it's gonna be used in the future to connect, then that's not a great idea.
What utilities are out there right now then?
It would be the storm water, storm sewer. I'm assuming there might be, I don't know if there's any cable, electrical, or anything else buried underground, but there would be easements and items that would all have to be vacated if we were gonna give the right of way away or sell the right of way back. So your taxpayer dollars have invested in that stretch of the road that you want to give back to someone else.
Nice thinking outside the box though, huh?
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah,
trying to see if
Or
there's-
purchase, but
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Does anybody else have anybody, not to move on from those points too, but, and again, in the world of the issues, at least that I see coming up, under the section 22 off-street parking, loading requirements, 3 general provision, subsection B, prohibited uses in required parking areas, and commercial vehicles and equipment being specifically listed.
Which attachment was that?
Page 23, attachment 6.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question too, because if there was a sale of the property, and we're talking off-street parking, in this particular use that you're going to use, off-street parking is not gonna be an issue, because most of the items there for people that are coming in, it's public, it's not just commercial. They're work trucks, however, if they sell, and somebody decides to have a business across the street, that's a lot of land, then the off-street parking is a very real portion of that because of the size of the lot. However, being that it's the end of the street, and I don't see you said there's gonna be an
Temporarily end of the
expansion.
street.
Yeah.
It's in the long-term
And
plan.
and it's gonna be a long-term plan, but that line there divides where they can have businesses, and it's just residential, correct? The zoning changes. Does it-
No, these are
Okay.
zoned B2 or B3, even though this one's current use is residential.
Okay,
This is commercial use right now, I believe.
Okay.
Truck
Yep.
repair.
yeah,
Second
so that makes a difference to me. I mean, I don't have a problem with the conditional use. I think it's a great idea, and it'll help your business, as long as if there's expansion in that street, you're still going to be, serving that commercial district. So I don't know if the property owners, and there's no issue, why there would be a future issue with this, approving this conditional use permit. I think it's less likely there'd be an issue here than we might see in other areas.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's too many unknowns, and you never know who has a use for what, or, again, and if it's now just allowed to be a storage area, a lot of people could do a lot of different things with that at a future date if that was there.
It is zoned light industrial. There's a lot worse
Mm-hmm.
uses of that property could go in there without us stopping them.
No, again, I'm
Right,
not
so-
arguing
right,
that
right.
standpoint, I'm
So
just trying to
that,
figure out.
that's to another reason, to me, it's a useful.
Right,
Well-
I'll just say that, I'm in favor of doing this too. I just like to kind of maybe brainstorm about what's the worst thing that could go there and how could we maybe prevent that with a condition to this? If,
Planning for the unknown here.
sure,
It's just, it'd be nice to answer all those questions right now. I agree, since this is a conditional use permit, approval or denial, that we should, try and I don't know, put in place some variables that could keep us from slipping, you know, into something that's not favorable, but, again, this is purely hypothetical. I mean, I don't know how to speculate on what's not favorable for the city, you know, 10 years from now, or 5 years from now, or whatever it's gonna be, so,
But are we ignoring the ordinances that are prohibiting the use that they're requesting with the condition, or through the conditional use permit?
Right.
That's the struggle I have. Again, I could see all the reasons for it. I'm not trying to be the naysayer in all this. I could see all the reasons for it, but if there's a roadblock that says that it's not, we have to overcome that too.
Yeah, the way the code is written is that the exterior storage is connected to or associated with the operation happening on the parcel.
Thank you.
That's
Yeah.
the hang up in the code.
So what
that's
if
why
the
we're
owner
here.
went to the county and got one tax ID for both properties?
They can't be connected
Why not?
because there's a road or right of way running between them.
There's a lot of properties that have roads.
They won't, I can tell you where I am, my house, and Aaron knows this. On Coon Lake, if you go down Cedar, towards where everybody, you know, goes out on their boats, my property's on the corner there, and because of
sorry.
Longfellow, I have 2 different property IDs. So I have the property my house is on, and since Longfellow is there, even though it's only, how long is that, probably
10 feet.
20,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, it's gotta be like 200 long, that's it. And then it ends, I mean, it's just a horseshoe. The county will not let me connect the pins with the property across
How
the
did they
street.
connect the property that was at the council meeting last night? They were on 2 different streets. They only
Those have a shared lot line of 20 feet.
Okay, so they determined with a roadway, it's not a shared lot line.
Well, Diana's giving you a real life example.
Yeah.
They've been trying for 20 years
Yep,
or longer.
and
And
I
every
I
time
even
the
told them,
county,
yeah.
every time she goes to the county, they're told, no, thank you, go away.
Yeah.
We're not interested.
But if we dismiss this piece of property, then
So-
he could.
You can't dismiss it. The council
That's
can
what I'm saying.
offer it back up
Right.
for resale or vacation,
Yeah.
but again, that would not be supported by staff. It's probably not a wise idea, but certainly the council can do what they want to do.
Sure.
Yeah, we asked to buy the road there, because it would then dead end to our house, and we wouldn't have 500 vehicles driving by, and they just kind of laughed at me, so. So,
You
We
know,
did
if
talk
this,
to the
if
city
this
about that
wasn't
too.
part of the long-term roads plan or
Sure.
a future extension,
Mhm.
then you're talking a whole different story. But with the concepts that have been proposed and are in the plans and, you know, long-term planning, I mean, anything's possible, but I don't foresee that being very supported.
if we ask for the condition that a principal building be placed on this parcel over a certain period of time, would that satisfy the ordinances then?
But then it would only be to the size of the structure on the property,
Yeah,
and now
then
you
your
run into that
exterior storage
condition.
is limited to the 2 times the footprint of the principal structure.
And we could make that same argument on the existing property currently, but I'm choosing not to look at that either. So that's not needed.
well,
Okay.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
If nobody has any comments, I would like to make a motion.
Okay, do you have any conditions that you want to put on there?
I do,
Okay.
and then we can talk about it obviously then. So I would like to make a motion to approve this conditional use permit as written in the attached, starting on page 10, proposed resolution with additional conditions added to the list that you have. So it will be H, I, and J. The addition of a minimum of a 20-foot apron at the entrance. I think the topography that's already mentioned here as a restriction would satisfy the consideration of not removing the trees, right?
Preserving.
Well-
Preserving the trees there on the outside.
So if you look at the conditions in your packet,
Mhm.
section 23
Mhm.
defines what screening should be.
Okay, so,
And that is included in the conditions already here
mhm,
that I've already
yeah,
listed.
yeah, okay, right.
So we
that's
can't, we
covered,
can't stop someone from clearing land.
right?
We can only obligate that they replace based on what the ordinance states. So, I mean,
Right.
you can ask them to not take trees down, but we have no authority
Right,
to do that, so.
okay,
So that's the condition D then.
Condition D talks about what the screening must require.
well, condition D and condition G talks about filling in or changing the earth's.
And that has to do with
topography,
the
so we
stormwater runoff.
Yep, okay, so the additional condition would be the H, the 20-foot. The next one would be, can we add a condition where they do a consideration for design of a pond, for a wastewater pond?
No.
We can't?
If the city engineer requires a pond, they won't be able to do anything. We won't hand them a permit until they build a pond.
Okay.
So
Okay,
it's gonna be a lot on what the city
Yeah.
and site plan approval comes up with.
okay, then I would, can we make a condition, no public parking? It's used for commercial parking?
Sure, that can be a condition. It's not open to the public.
Yep, so those would be the 3 additional. So H would be 20-foot apron, I would be no public parking, conditional to use of business vehicles only. And the last one would be that utility loading and storage of vehicles related to the business on the parcel, business parcel.
So can you repeat that one, please?
So I would like to make a motion to approve the conditional use permit as stated in the attached on page 10 resolution to include 3 additional conditions, one being a 20-foot apron, another being no public parking, and another being that utility vehicles and storage is related directly to the business and the business at the business parcel, across
Are
the road.
permitted.
Yeah, for the permit.
Okay.
They're requesting equipment, materials, all of that. You're okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, related to the business, that's why. Yeah, so that would be, I suppose, if they had to bring in, they got these big pallets of something that they're gonna purchase, they're gonna come in and load. So when I use the term loading, that's what I'm assuming is it's product material that they're going to load on their trucks and be moving in and out of that spot. Is that,
Aaron, is that clear to you?
No, but I'll figure it out.
Do you
Do
need
I need
more
to
time
restate
to
it?
discuss it? Okay. Is there a second?
Could I ask for possible consideration of another condition? I
To
don't know if
amend
it's
that?
already covered elsewhere, but hours of operation in deference to the neighbors.
Not already part of part of the code.
We do have items related to noise ordinance in the code that would limit operation based
Right.
on noise.
Then I withdraw my suggestion.
okay?
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Great. And any discussion before we take the vote?
I do have to ask a couple of things for clarification. Item D, and this might just be the outdated code. Screening shall consist of a compact green and or deciduous hedge, an overstory or understory tree sufficient with density, an earth berm. Actually, let's go to E. Shall contain a fence. If you look at the code, the screening on 23, fences are masonry, brick, or wood. They're proposing a chain link fence with slats. Our code doesn't outright say chain link fence, but part of their proposal was a chain link fence, so I included in the conditions a fence, just to cover all the bases. Are you good with the chain link fence, or do you want it to match the conditions in the city code?
Well, I think the screening includes that they have to have screening on that, so would they have to put additional screening on that fence? Just like the pictures, if you take a look at the
That's what they're
pictures.
proposing. As I'm saying, our code states
Yeah.
that it has to be wood, cement, or masonry or brick.
So if it ever changed and somebody wanted to do something different, and even though they had the same, but somebody takes it down, they can
So-
change it.
Do we care that it is a chain link fence? It is a fence.
Yeah, that's what the neighbors is too, the chain link.
They're gonna be required to have the vegetation, the hedge, the trees, bushes as, additional layer of screening with that fence then closer to the property. I just wanted to bring that
And
up
how
for
tall is
clarification.
the fence, isn't it 6 feet?
6 foot.
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
6-foot fence.
I'm
I'm
fine
fine
with
with that.
Okay, and I'll just leave it as, with a fence. We won't get too specific on what kind of fence then.
It's good. Okay, any other discussion before we vote on this? Okay,
Just real quick, just again, I'll reiterate my point of, like I said, I can see a lot of reasons for, but I have to state an opposition for the items that we may be ignoring here that go outside of the code.
Sure.
It's a blatant disregard of them, in my opinion, so, just my 2 cents on it.
okay.
Again, I would love to approve it, but again, we're not addressing some of the areas that are, are clear restrictions within the code.
Okay, so if no other discussion, let's have a vote on this. All in favor of the motion as stated by Diana, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Aye.
Okay, and that motion passes. And this is a recommendation then to the city council, and it'll be about 2 weeks from last night, I think, when they are meeting.
October 14th.
And, okay, so also, neighbor, if you'd like to go too. I don't think there'll be another public hearing, but there is a public forum that you kind of have one last chance to say something if you'd like. Okay, and I thank you all for coming tonight and your patience with us while we draw out the discussion. And I gotta say, I really do appreciate Tanner for all the things you say, because we need discussion.
Again, it's not meant to be, again, opposition, I can't, again, I've been here too long, too many times to see
Sure.
things like this, and again, I remember in my early years, and again, I'll warrant back to Eldon, who took a similar approach to probably where I am now
Exactly.
and when he left, that was one of the specific things he had mentioned, and I've mentioned this before, that has stayed with me, and I've really tried to consider that as we're looking at these things, not saying that the code is right or wrong, not saying that I do or don't want these for residents. I would love to approve to let everybody do everything, but at the same point, we have to work within the parameters that we have in front of us, and can't just ignore them because 8 out of 10 things look good, but these other 2, and we'll just ignore the 2. That's all I'm
Message
getting.
received.
Yep. So,
Thank you.
motion to
Okay.
adjourn.
There's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Everyone wants to go home? Thank you, everyone.